We're back on Race for the White House. I'm David Gregory. Glad to have you. Time now for 3 questions. Still with us, host of the Rachel Maddow Show on Air America, Rachel Maddow, Washington Post columnist Eugene Robinson, both MSNBC political analysts. Time Magazine's Washington bureau chief is here, Jay Carney, and Morning Joe himself, host of MSNBC's Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough. First, in 3 questions tonight, Barack Obama has been compared to American legends Martin Luther King Jr. and Presidents Lincoln and Kennedy. Now, author Alice Walker has added this, who wrote The Color Purple, of course, says Obama could, in fact, be America's Nelson Mandela. In the British newspaper The Guardian, Walker writes the following to the quote board: "He is, in fact, a remarkable human being, not perfect, but humanly stunning like King was and like Mandela is. He is the change America has been trying desperately and for centuries to hide, ignore, kill. The change it must have if we are to convince the rest of the world that we care about people other than our white selves." Mandela, of course, became South Africa's first black president after successfully leading the fight to abolish apartheid, spending 27 years in prison and winning the Nobel Peace Prize. Our first question tonight: has the Obama mythology gone a little bit too far, Gene?
Well, I think Alice Walker went a little too far. I mean, look, Dr. King and Nelson Mandela were 2 of the most important, most effective, world-changing leaders of the 20th century. And to compare Barack Obama to either of them at this point is it makes no sense to me. It's apples and oranges, or apples and tiny little atoms or something at this point. I mean, these are historical figures. And, we will see if he gets to be president, if he does something transformative as president, then, maybe this is a discussion that can be had, but not now.
Rachel, one of the things that her argument makes me think about is the idea that almost the appeal that to exorcise white guilt, that you've got to turn to Barack Obama. Is that going to play?
Well, yeah, and the rest of that parallel is that you need martyrs to deal with that sort of guilt and to deal with that sort of social transformation. I mean, Nelson Mandela's 27 years in prison is central to his leadership skills and to what he meant to South Africa and to the world. I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. Their martyrdom is central to their role as leaders. And if the idea is that you assuage guilt and that you move on through the blood and pain of your martyrs, I'm not sure that's where you want to put any politician, let alone one who has served 1 term in the Senate and is now running for president. It's just an impossible thing to put him up against.
If he's elected president of the United States, though, I think that'll be an even greater achievement than Nelson Mandela finally being elected president of South Africa in a majority black country. Of course, he suffered in ways that Barack Obama could never imagine suffering, but African Americans have suffered enough in this country.
But he had to do something that Obama doesn't have to do, though.
Overturning apartheid. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Barack Obama will have become president because of everything that's happened before him. And it'll be the country's achievement more than Obama's in many ways.
But it'll be standing on the shoulders of giants like Martin Luther King, who dreamed of this moment and is the guy that took us into Egypt. Israel, I guess, took us into Israel.
Yes, wrong way.
Please don't take us back to Egypt.
We don't want to go.
We don't want to go there. But still, he's a transformative figure.
Let me move on to the next question. John McCain, in 100 years in Iraq, the presumptive GOP nominee, still being criticized for saying that he would be willing to keep U.S. forces in Iraq for, quote, 100 years. McCain made the comment at a campaign stop in Derry, New Hampshire, nearly 4 months ago, and Democrats have been pounding him for it ever since. Just yesterday, Barack Obama brought it up during a campaign stop in Pennsylvania.
John McCain, we can run the YouTube spot, has said that we will stay there as long as it takes, and if it takes another 100 years, he's up for that commitment.
The Obama camp later issued a statement acknowledging that McCain was actually talking about a peacetime commitment, not a 100-year war, but Democrats aren't likely to let it go, are they, Jay?
No, of course they're not. I mean, this is what campaigns are made of. And when a statement like that, while it can be, oversimplified, when it resonates with a greater fact, I think it has effect, as it has in previous campaigns. The fact is, the distinction between McCain and the Democrats is that he is pro-Iraq war. He is willing to run on that. And he does envision an American presence in Iraq for a long time. And the reality is, you can talk about it being a South Korean-style presence, but Iraq is a long way from being a Korea-like situation.
Right, that's exactly the point, Joe, is that this presupposes that there's a level of stability in Iraq going forward that we had after World War II. And isn't that McCain's real potential vulnerability?
Well, yeah, perhaps. But, of course, Korea wasn't so stable in 1953, 1954 either. So it is misleading, and the Obama campaign knew that they had stepped into territory they didn't want to step into because he was talking about that peacetime commitment. He's not talking about a 100-year war. And if the Democrats want to go around talking about what John... Listen, bottom line is, the Democrats have enough to differentiate themselves on John McCain and Iraq and Iran and the use of military force without having to retch his words from their proper context.
But, John, the proper context here ought to really be understood. John McCain has said that if our troops are not incurring casualties, then they can stay for 100 years, 1,000 years, whatever. He's also said our troops can't.
It's not a 100-year war, though.
But he's also said if our troops cannot leave if they are incurring casualties. So John McCain's properly contextualized remarks on this actually, in either case, mean that our troops can't come home, and that's proper territory.
Right now?
What's that?
Are we at war in Germany and Korea and
but you talk about not understanding.
It's not Korea.
You talk about not understanding the consequences.
It's not Korea right now, but Korea wasn't Korea in 1953.
But you talk about not understanding the consequences of defeat. We overturned that government, and we did so in such a way that requires us to stay 100 years to ensure stability. And talk about not understanding the consequences of defeat. That's snatching defeat from the
Eugene, final point on this. Eugene, go ahead. Eugene, final point on this.
No, my point on this is, when does Iraq become Korea? How many years? Is it 10 years? Is it 20 years? Is it 30 years? It's a bunch of years, and it's disingenuous to say, oh, well, I was just talking about a Korea-style deployment when that isn't going to happen. That is not realistic.
The question that he's putting on the table, the question is, will Americans support a long engagement in Iraq provided that security is under control? We're not talking about losing troops on a daily basis, but in a true presence where we are invited and we're trying to keep some calm. That debate goes on. Pop quiz now. Who does the most campaign events in a day, Clinton or Obama? It is, after all, a trick question because the answer is Clinton, but not the candidate, her husband. Bill Clinton is campaigning at a breakneck pace, visiting 6 states in the past week. He's doing 4 events in Montana today, another 4 in Indiana tomorrow. And NBC's own First Read reports the former president will soon head to Puerto Rico. That is before his wife, Senator Clinton, gets there, which brings us to the third question now. Is Bill Clinton the most effective person as being Hillary Clinton's advance man, Jay? Is that his role?
Well, it's a better role than he's had at other times during this campaign when I think he's hurt Senator Clinton's efforts to reach out. And yes, look, Bill Clinton remains, for all intents and purposes, the head of the Democratic Party because, he's the 2-term president. He's still enormously popular. And while he hurt himself with some constituencies in the Democratic Party during this primary season, he's a huge draw. And I think they've worked out a relationship now where he's not delivering one-liners that get him in trouble or the campaign in trouble, but he is being effective.
I would also make this argument, Rachel, that Bill Clinton still stands to be more effective than Hillary Clinton in having some sway with these superdelegates.
I think that's probably a good case. I mean, superdelegates need to be moved in great numbers if things are going to happen for the Clinton campaign anytime in the next few months, certainly heading into Denver. I think the main thing that Bill Clinton's doing for the Clinton campaign right now is that he's floating controversial stuff. He's still out there ahead of her, making arguments, advancing arguments, seeing how they go over, and leaving Hillary Clinton enough distance from them to be able to disavow them if need be.
Is it a problem, though, Joe? Is it too big of a distraction for her?
He was a distraction in January. He was a distraction in most of February. But my gosh, she owes Texas and this campaign. The fact that this campaign moves forward, she owes it in large part to what Bill Clinton did in Texas. I say that as a guy that just trashed Bill Clinton in January and February, but they really figured out the formula when he went down to Beaumont, Texas, and said, my wife has to win Texas or this campaign will be over.
But isn't that the point,
state
Joe?
Like nobody.
That he whips up the base here. He really is a grassroots weapon.
He is, and as long as he doesn't get in trouble by words he says, that's fine. I mean, the closest he's come was when he was called out as being the Democrats' answer to Joe McCarthy, but the response was so over the top by the Obama campaign, that didn't even draw any blood in the long run.
David, I would just say a brief footnote on the Texas issue. Of course, it's now turned out that Barack Obama is the one who won Texas in terms of getting the most delegates out of it, with the caucus results coming in now.
Not in the popular vote, though, when it counted.
But popular vote isn't the way the Democrats pick their nominee.
Hillary Clinton's still alive because she won the popular vote, and we all reported that she won Texas until right now.
And one wonders, Joe, one wonders, there are a lot of what-ifs in this, but had they figured out how to use Bill Clinton more effectively earlier on, and some other, if they had and should they have done things, that Clinton might have run a much more effective campaign overall. Because I think you're right, what he's doing now and what he's done since Texas has been very effective for Hillary.